Innovation no longer remains a choice but has become an imperative. A very good evening and heartily welcome to our respected guests and students. I am Jyoti Nautiyal, your host and moderator for today's session, and I welcome you all to the session of this delightful day. In this session, we will have insights on the importance of innovation and IP, which is intellectual property rights, in various industries. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our guest of this session, Mr. Rohan Turior. Sir is an experienced IP expert and innovation enthusiast with a track record of success in the field of intellectual property, strategy framework creation, and execution. Rohan sir is currently associated with Fleetguard Filters Private Limited as Head of Intellectual Property. Sir is TRIZ Level 3 expert, intellectual property management leader, and has more than 15 years of experience in innovation, IP protection, problem solving, patent circumvention, and technology management. Sir has done his Bachelor's of Technology in Electrical and Electronic Engineering from Uttar Pradesh Technical University and a postgraduate diploma in patent laws from Nasir University, Hyderabad. Now I request Rohan sir to open his address to the eager audience.
We are going to talk about a very interesting topic today. That's intellectual property and innovation. As you know, that I have been associated in this field for quite some time now. So this field is pretty close to me. Uh, Now, what I'll do is I'll take you guys through a presentation. Okay, so guys, today we are going to go through a topic that talks about importance of innovation and IP in the industry. I understand that you guys are management students, and post the completion of your course, you guys would be taking up important key roles in various industries. Uh, and that's the reason why I chose this topic to talk with you guys. Because in my opinion, it's guys like you who are going to take up those key positions in various industries, and you would become a decision maker now at or at some point of time in your life. So it's very important for you to understand why is innovation and IP important as such for the industry and for the growth of the industry as such. Okay. Um, I'll share a small presentation with you guys, and please feel free to answer any specific questions that you may have, which is either being touched upon during the presentation or has anything to do with the content of the presentation or the topic of the presentation, even if that's not touched upon during my presentation. So, with that, I start the presentation. Before we go ahead with importance of IP and how IP or industry is important to the how IP or innovation is important to the industry, I would like you guys to understand as to India as an economy, where does it really stand when it comes to innovation? So these are the world's top 10 economies, and apart from the top 10 economies, uh, there's another inclusion that's there in the list. That's the 11th rank. That's Hong Kong, China, and India as such stands on 48th position. Why do I bring Hong Kong or China as well into this uh, list over here when we are discussing? There's a good reason to it. Now, if we trace the history back about say 10, 15 years, India and China were pretty much at par. Okay. And in the last 10, 15 years, what China has done is they have done a lot of work in both the domain of intellectual property as well as a lot of work in the areas of innovation. So as to bring them amongst the top 10, I would consider them as a top 10 itself in the 11th position as the innovative economies in the world. Okay. So this is just this is the part of the presentation where I try to show the mirror, and these are some snippets from the Global Innovation Index. So this is a part of the Global Innovation Index. Global Innovation Index is an initiative by the World Intellectual Property Organization where they give you the rankings on the global scale as to which are the most innovative economies. And these are a few interesting snippets of the GII report. So the GII, what it does is it also categorizes the economies by income group, and there are four different income groups that they identify. This is the high income group, the upper middle income group, the lower middle income group, and the low income group. So if you see, they have categorized China in the upper middle income group, and they rank the first there, followed by Malaysia and Bulgaria. The lower income group, lower middle income group, uh, it would have been good even if we were the number one in the lower middle income group, but there too we come at number three or the third position, preceded by Ukraine and Vietnam, respectively. And the star that's there against our name, it shows, and it's both an point to ponder upon as well as something interesting. It shows that we are a new inclusion in the list as of this year's report. So the good part is it looks like that we are working, so we are already moving up there. But then there remains to be a lot of work to be done. Okay. Now there are two more headlines that I've shared. It says that the global innovation landscape is shifting. China, Vietnam, India, and Philippines are consistently on the rise. Okay. A global innovation landscape is shifting. China, Vietnam, India, and Philippines are on the rise. And people who would have done even a little bit of study as to what are the distinguishing factors that India as an economy has, you will see that Philippines follows us very closely in all those distinguishing factors, whether it is related to the average age of the country or whether it's related to the amount of work that they do or the outsourcing hub of the world. They are also amongst one of the outsourcing hubs of the world. And the other headline that I've shared is China's R&D expenditure has grew by 8.6% in 2018, and India's R&D spending is estimated at 5.5%. So you see, China is spending consistently more. That this actually correlates with the headline on the left, that China is spending more, so it's growing as a global innovation. It's becoming a part of the global innovation index, and rightly so, growing further as well. Now let's move to the next slide and try and understand how is this affecting India. Now, in the past 1 year, there's a lot of changes that has happened in the way India trades. Whether it trades, be it its trades with the other economies, be it its trades with China, so on and so forth. So this is a trade summary of India of the past 1 year. Total exports valued at $322,000 million. Total value of imports is 6,17,000 million dollars. And that this clearly goes on to show that this results in negative trade balance of minus 2,95,000 million dollars. Now the next thing is even interesting. The trade growth is 0.87%. It would have been okay if the world was also growing at the same rate, but then it's much lower because it says compared to the world growth of 3.5%. Okay. Now, if we want to delve a little deeper into this, let's come to the last headline. India is thus a net importer in December 2020 with a trade deficit of $15.71 billion. And now, if we compare the same trade deficit a year ago as compared to the trade deficit of USD $12.49 billion. Now, this comparison is with December 2019. This clearly goes on to show that there is a widening of trade deficit by 25.78%. Rightly so, the year of pandemic, there's a lot less work that's happening. There's a lot less export or production that's happening within the country. The consumption is going on. But is that the sole reason? Now, go on to dig a little deep into this. Just a little deep into this. This is the India's export and import data. China, as a country, has 14.37% of the overall imports that we do from the world. Second only to China is US, which is 7.5%, which is almost half of what we import from China. So that goes on to show the amount of dependence that we have on China for our imports or for satisfying our needs as an economy. Now, let's look at the share of overall exports. Now, though US comes to second position for the overall imports, US is the number one economy when it comes to exports. But China falls at a distant number three with 5.47%. Now you'll say that, why make such a hue and cry about only China? Because you have Saudi Arab on the list of imports, but that's not there on the list of exports. We'll get to understand this. We'll definitely get to understand this. There is a reason to it. Now let's see what do we import from China. What we import from economies like Saudi Arab, Iraq, it's pretty much evident. UAE, it's oil. Switzerland, a lot of medicine and stuff like that. So there's what we import from here in UAE, Arab, and Iraq is something that's related to natural resources that happens in those countries and are specific to those specifically to those uh, economies. But when it comes to China, what is it that we import from China? Can we not make it? Now let's look at this. Our major imports from China are telecom instruments, computer hardware and peripherals, fertilizers, electrical machinery, etc. We are pretty much, self-sufficient in doing this. We can actually do this on our own. Okay. Still, if we look at the first half of the slide, it says that over 14% of India's total import, which we had seen on the previous slide, comes from China. In 2020, India imported goods worth $58.71 billion from China. But the third part is a little bit of glimmer of hope. In 2020, Chinese exports to India declined by 13%, and Indian trade was up by 16%. So when there was a call for boycott China, we actually went on to reduce the amount of imports from China. We tried to suffice ourselves with products that are made in India. So that goes on to say that there is dependence, no doubt about it. But is that inevitable? Probably not. Probably not. So what is it that ensures that we keep importing from economies like China? Okay. When you try to buy something from somewhere for your own consumption, there are just a few factors that govern this decision. One, you can't make it. Two, you are not allowed to make it. One is probably clearly not the reason, because if you can't make it, then you probably need to work on your production capability. That's not as much a problem, and that's not that grave a problem. You can't make it, you'll work hard to improve your production capabilities, to improve your manufacturing sector, and now you can manufacture it. What is more disturbing is you are not allowed to do it. Now, what ensures that you're not allowed to do it? What ensures that you're not allowed to do it? Keep this question in your minds. As we move ahead, we'll answer this question. This probably is the reason because of which you're not allowed to make it. If you are selling products which are protected by means of patents or intellectual property, then there is clearly a reason as to you may be not allowed to make it, even though you can make it. As we are seeing in the case of these vaccines that we are talking about these days, with Corona growing and growing, outnumbering the number of medical facilities that we have in the country, there are a lot of vaccines or there are a lot of products that we are not able to make, which we may have to import. You may have seen there's a lot of hue and cry about Bill Gates not supporting the waiving off of IP rights for development or for production of vaccines in India, for increasing the production of vaccines across the globe. So these IP rights are things that would actually give you an upper hand in trade, and it would bring you that uh, it would bring you that position in trade where you can actually govern the way trade is done. That's probably the reason why IP becomes so important. By definition, IP refers to the creation of mind, like inventions, literary and artistic work, designs and symbols, names and images used in economy. Now, I would like to, join these dots with with the experience that I have, first-hand experience of stuff that I have since I'm working in this domain. There are products that we make here in India. Okay, I'm part of Fleetguard Filters. Okay, Fleetguard Filters is a joint venture between Cummins US and an Indian company. Okay, now there are products that are made by Fleetguard Filters in India, and that's based on license. All the production is being done here in India because we can produce things at a really cheap rate, and then these produced goods are exported from India. And what we get is a very paltry sum of the money, paltry part of the money that the importer earns by selling these products, which were actually produced by the Indian arm. That's why IP becomes so important, because these guys who are giving us the license to manufacture, they are the IP rights holders. Only if they allow us to sell these products here in India, we'll be in a position to sell. If they say that even if you're producing, you're just allowed, you're not given the license to sell, you're just given the license to export, then we will not be in a position to sell here in India. Even though we may understand that there's a need for those products here in India, that's where IP becomes extremely important. Now let's understand further from the business perspectives where IP becomes more important. Let's look at some global filing trends. Okay, this is again a report. WIPO makes quite a few reports. The first one that I shared with you was the Global Innovation Index, where the institution tries to rank economies based on their efforts to boost innovation in their respective countries. Now, this is the report where they go on to show which country is filing how many patents. So, if you see on the top left of the slide, it says China, 46.4% of all patents filed worldwide. 46%. So when you look at China at 11th position today, there will be no doubt that China goes on to dominate this position pretty soon. Okay. US applicants filed the largest number of applications abroad. So US, there's a lot of so that's the reason why US we comes to number two in the imports, and not just for India but for a lot of economies. A lot of economies actually import products which are made either by US companies, or they take license to the technologies which were developed in the US to be produced maybe in their country. Okay. Then the third one is a pretty interesting fact. The Republic of Korea had the highest number of patent applications per unit GDP. Now, we have seen the Global Innovation Index prepared by WIPO. Now, there is another ranking of innovation that's done by an organization called Statista. And if Statista is to be believed, then the 2021 index that the WIPO reports generally come after the end of the year, whereas Statista reports come somewhere in April. So this is when the Statista reports has come. WIPO report. So the WIPO report that I showed to you was based on the work that was done by economies until say October November of 2020. Statista's report considers the complete of 2020 and the first quarter of 2021. And if Statista is to be believed, the Republic of Korea has usurped all other economies and come as number one, the most innovative economy across the globe. That remains to be seen. We'll see that in the Global Innovation Index as well when it comes at the end of 2021. And now, the most important part of the slide is on the top bottom hand of the slide, you see the trend in patent application filing for the top 5 offices from 1883 until 2018. There's a breakout at somewhere around 2000, and the only country that's breaking out here is actually China. The rest all are pretty much in the similar position. The only country, Japan, broke out somewhere in 1970s. That's the time when a lot of innovation had happened around the manufacturing sector, where Six Sigma came into being and stuff like that. That's where Japan started growing. And 2000 is where China has started growing. And it has not started growing. Let me tell you, it's jumped. It's jumped the guns exponentially. Now, there are two more graphs that I would want you guys to have a look at. You already see in this graph, India comes distant 7th almost. Okay. And in this graph too, the orange bar shows by non-residents. So India may, the patents filed by non-residents are more than the patents filed by the residents in the country. Okay. And the only economy that does other than that is India is US. Amongst the top 10, the only economy which actually bothers us is US and EPO. So this happens here is because there is a lot of exchange between US and Europe that happens. And that goes on to substantiate that US applicants filed the largest number of patent applications abroad also. So whatever little innovation that they are doing, they are spreading it across the globe. Okay. And they are coming up with those groundbreaking innovations which would actually be needed by people across the globe. Now let's look at this. Of whatever little we filed, the share of withdrawn applications were highest in India. So this goes on to show that we are not actually filing because we probably came up with something that was very interesting. India has a lot of grants, you know. There is a body called DSIR, and there are several other bodies that give you grants for doing research. Okay. Their matrices of understanding whether you are doing research or not is the number of patent applications that you file. And a lot of companies to manipulate this indices actually file a lot of patents, which they go on to abandon after a certain period of time. So, see, try to understand what is the point that I'm trying to make here. I'm not trying to make a point here that we need to file a lot of patents. What I'm trying to make a point here is we need to innovate. Because if we innovate and if we truly innovate, then definitely the patents would be an outcome. And why do we need to innovate? Because we need to grow and we need to come to a stage where we are self-sufficient and we are not in a trade deficit. Okay. We are exporting probably more than what we are importing, because if we start exporting more than what we are importing, our currency strengthens and the economy strengthens at the same time. So, and the third graph over here, what is the meaning of this? Non-residents applicant accounted for 30.4% trademark filing activities in US. And why I've shown this graph here is, look at India. In India, trademark filed by residents is much, much higher, almost 4 times higher than the trademarks filed by non-residents. Filing of trademarks goes on to denote that there are a lot of businesses being registered within the country. So it's not that we are not doing business. It's probably that we are doing business, but we are just trading. We are not innovating. So we probably need to shift the focus from trading to innovations. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. Then again, like we've seen here, that we keep importing stuff from China that we may have been in a position to, you know, make on our own. So that clearly shows why IP. The product is a success and IP gives you a strong position. You'll get a lot of sustainable margins. So from the point of view of businesses, you would always want to have sustainable margins for the products that you're creating. And the only way to get those sustainable margins is having a strong IP position. And plus, IP gives you another uh, very important point to look upon. That is that your product will not be copied. Your product will not be copied at least for the time as long as the IP is existing. Okay. So if you make a product today and if the product becomes a hit, there are high chances that at some point of time you don't even need to make the product. The product is a hit, somebody else will take license from you, keep producing it for you, selling it in the market, you keep getting the revenues in the form of royalties. Okay, and you can go on to produce something more important for the mankind or develop something more important for the mankind. So that's the reason why we innovate. Now let's try to have a look at what are the different kind of intellectual properties. Trademarks, designs, copyrights, and patents. There are a few more that are not listed here. We'll talk about it. There's something that's called as geographical indicator, and there is something that's called as semiconductor integrated circuit design layout registrations. These are the two more IP rights that are not listed here. It's a very simple product that you see. The shape of the bottle or the configuration of a bottle is the subject matter of a design. The name is the subject matter of a trademark. The way the label is depicting the product with the coconut tree in the background with a blue background, the coconut tree in green color. That's the subject matter of a copyright. And this flip open button, a flip open jar, that probably is the subject matter of a patent, provided it was done. They were the first ones to do it, provided. Okay, now let's have a look at who administers these rights. Legislations and type of IP. So trademarks, the legislation is Trademark Act, patents, the Patent Act, design is the Design Act, and copyright is the Copyright Act. Trademarks have a term of 10 year, renewable by another 10-year, and this is perpetual. So you can have a trademark for as long as you are doing business. Keep renewing it for 10 years. Patents have a finite life of 20 years. Design have a finite life of 10 years, renewable by another 5 years, so 15 years. Copyrights are the IP rights that have the largest of the uh, term amongst all the IP rights. Now, why so? Because it is clearly understood that copyright is one of the rights which, uh, when come into being, people don't earn from it immediately, but they go on to earn from it over a period of time. That's why the protection is given for a larger period of time. So, hence, copyrights have a protection of more than six, a protection of 60 years beyond the death of the author. After having seen this, now we need to understand that there is a strategy that we would need to make around these various rights to develop the intellectual property or to protect the innovation of an organization. What should that strategy be? Now, let's have a look at, and these are whatever I'm telling you are my opinions based on my experiences and understanding that I have gained over practicing in this domain for a certain period of time. An effective IP strategy, as per my understanding, is something that aligns to the business interest of the organization. It would align to the business strategy. It would keep in mind the market dynamics or the market depth, keeps in mind the know-how of technology maturity, and it should work on correct customer need identification. Correct customer need identification is another very important topic here. Now, an effective IP strategy we've spoken about should consider business strategy, market dynamics, technology maturity, and customer need identification. So these are the basic four ingredients. Now, what are the various suggested IP strategies? There are two suggested IP strategies for organizations as well. The reactive strategy or the proactive strategy. What would the reactive strategy work in? Reactive strategy answers what needs to be protected. Should all innovations be patented? When do I need to protect my innovations? And what are the different kind of IP instruments I need to protect my business interests? IP strategy dwells around these questions. And the proactive IP strategy is, if I do have an indigenous technology, how do I enter a technological space? So I don't have a technology. How do I enter the technological space? And how do I utilize my existing competencies to strengthen my IP position? So I don't have an indigenous technology. And how can I utilize my existing competencies to strengthen my IP position? These are the two questions that would be answered by the proactive strategy. The reactive strategy will have these two specific components: market value, technology maturity. Market value will have certain specific components such as the functional improvement of the product. Are we improving one of the functions of the product? Time to market. How soon will the product come into being? The might of competition. How strong is my competition? Number of players. So even if the competition is not very mighty, there are 15 different competitors. Uh, then what do I do? Criticality of the product performance and reliability. How critical is it for the product to perform below par, at par, or above par of the existing performance parameters? And how important is it for the product to be reliable? Let's take a simple example. This is one very interesting parameter. This is that's there as a part of the market value component. You would understand it from this example. If you're trying to manufacture a component for an aircraft, and if you're trying to manufacture a component for a cycle, how critical would reliability be in these two different products? In one of the products, the criticality of reliability becomes extremely important. So at that point of time, you need to go on to make sure that the product is as reliable as you can produce. And at the same time, you have to ensure that it probably needs to be a completely fail-safe product, because it's an aircraft. You can't expect one of the components of the aircraft to be not reliable. And then the other components being cost reduction, because I generally consider that there's this golden triangle of negotiation, where on all the three edges you have one of the edges is cost, the other is quality, and the third is time. And at any given point of time, you can only negotiate on one of these components. You cannot negotiate on all of these three components. You'll have to compromise on one of these three in order to negotiate on the other two components: cost, quality, and time. These are the three components that I'm talking about. And cost reduction is probably the biggest reasons why product are generally exported out of India, for the reason. The other important point being size reduction. So these are the components, market value components, or the ingredients of the market value components. So now we know that market value and technology maturity are the two parts. Now let's look at the framework that I suggest. If the market value is extremely high or extremely low, and these are the four basic type of technology maturity grades or categories that we have. So if we try to understand what exactly technology maturity is, I think I missed a slide. Okay, fine. So probably we skipped this slide. So there are four maturity classes of technology: the emerging, pacing, key, and base technology. Emerging technology is generated as a result of pre-competitive basic research. That's a speculative area of knowledge creation with highly uncertain commercial potentials. A car can run using water as a fuel. That's pre-competitive basic research. Okay. Steam engine in a car, basically. So bringing steam engine from trains to car, how sensible would it be? Hydrogen fueled cars, how sensible would it be? The commercial potential is completely uncertain at this point. Area of technological pacing, area of technological expertise considered important for commercial success, generally tried by early innovators and involves considerable amount of risk. The vaccines that are being made for corona would fall in this category. Right now, there's a huge market that's there, but it's involving considerable amount of risk. We are putting in a lot of money and physical resources in developing these things. The technology is pacing right now, but it's involving considerable amount of risk as well. Key areas of technological expertise that strongly influence comparative advantage, generate considerable rents, leads to strong investment activities. Now, again, I'll start taking the example of corona vaccines. Okay. Now, in order for these vaccines to be manufactured, there are a lot of raw materials that need to be provided to these vaccine manufacturers. And these raw materials are generally produced by economies like US, and we import these raw materials. So these are the base technologies based on which we start developing, or based on which we start building our own technology. So these are those areas of technology expertise which can be considered as key areas. They are giving a strong competitive advantage to those guys who hold rights to these products based on which these vaccines are developed. Now come to base. Base has become widely diffused, represents a basis of competition, is highly relevant for survival but offers no further competitive differentiation. So it's not offering any further competitive differentiation, but then it is the base technology. It's pretty much become the norm. Like let's say 5G for that example, 4G, 5G, 3G, people who have patents for these technologies, they have become base. Now you cannot sell a product saying that my phone adheres to 5G compliance. That's 4G compliance for that matter. 5G is still not that widely diffused here in India at least, but 4G compliance. That's not an edge for you in the business. But then that has become a norm. That's a base technology. But then at the same time, for people who have developed this technology, it was extremely important. It's a cash churner for them right now. We call such technologies or such patents as standards essential patents, because there are certain standards that are built around these patents, and anybody and everybody who has to follow these standards need a license to these patents. So these are the four technology maturity classes. The market value components we have already seen. Now these are the four technology maturity classes that are there on the x-axis, and the market value being on the y-axis. For market value, for technology that you have developed where the market value is high, these are the different IP strategies that are done: strategic patenting, fencing, combination, blanketing, and for flooding is generally for the pacing and emerging technology, because we don't know where exactly is the market moving in these areas. So you probably protect your IP rights left, right, and center, because you don't really know. One finder, this might just become the cash churner, because a good about 20 to 25% of those technologies lying here in the pacing and emerging sector have the potential to come to the base and key sector at one point of time during their life cycle. So these are the various IP strategies that need to be employed depending on where exactly you fall in within this framework. Now there is this proactive IP strategy that we were talking about. Proactive IP strategy will have two components: the capabilities or the inherent capabilities of the organization and the external environment. Now let's try and understand what these two things are. Capabilities, the parameters that define the capabilities are your human resource competencies, your infrastructure, your organization's infrastructure, how much capital can you infuse, your strategic alliance with different bodies, different institutions, other organizations within the same sector. What is the distribution network that you have? How is your supply chain? Suppose you develop something for a developed economy, but you don't have the supply chain to distribute the product in those economies. No use developing it. Availability of knowledge pool in that particular domain. You want to develop something, a blockchain based solution here in India. You have conceptualized a blockchain based solution here in India. The knowledge pool itself is very low. How would you develop the product? Market presence, geographical location, present market position. What is your present market position? Are you dominating the market? Are you amongst the lowest producers or the people who are lagging behind in the market? Because this clearly, goes on to define uh, whether you should really develop or not develop that particular technology. Next is external environment. External environment would cover business factors such as the need for survival. Is the product you're trying to develop going to be an alternate to an existing product, or is it going to be at the next gen product? So for whatever product that you're manufacturing, is that a need for your survival, or is it an alternative to an existing product, or what will be the next generation? What are the regulatory requirements related to that? What are the government policies and support? Is there a requirement for the product? What is the ecosystem? When I talk about ecosystem, I talk about the super system and the system. Let's say, for example, 10 years ago, you developed a fantastic electric vehicle, but the ecosystem or the super system itself is not there. There are no charging stations. You have developed a fantastic product, but probably it's ahead of its times. Market acceptability. These are the other external environments being there. Now let's look at the framework that I suggest for proactive IP strategy. This is the framework that I suggest. You are high on capabilities. The external environment shows that the interest is declining. You'll probably have to do strategic patenting where you file one or two patents, one or two IP rights, fencing your area, just trying to, maintain sanity that nobody should encroach this area or surrounding. The external environment shows that the interest is increasing, that you have extremely good capabilities, you protect the technology left, right, and center. Now there is this first quadrant that is most important here. The first quadrant being where the capabilities are low and the interest is declining. You probably need to learn and adopt here. Say, for example, the interest is declining, but it is the need for your survival. You cannot give it up. So you'll have to probably learn and adopt. You can't develop it. So these are the two different frameworks based on the different technology categorizations, the external environments, and capabilities. This is where, so this second IP strategy, the proactive IP strategy that we were talking about, based on these, this is the framework, and this is what we need to decide which horse to pick. We buy, we build, or we partner. And I keep saying this very often these days that it's not our time to compete. This is the era of collaboration. You'll grow with collaboration, you'll grow largely with collaboration. So you need to understand whether you want to uh, gain a leadership position. So build is only when you want to gain leadership position in that product, and that is your core business. That's your business. That's the only thing that you do, and that you people identify you by that business. And by the way, the core also shifts. Huh? The standing example being Mr. Bill Gates. Mr. Bill Gates of Microsoft has started getting a lot of patents on vaccines, on pharma products. So there's this goes on to show that he's probably, if not jumping the guns, he is pivoting around this his existing capabilities where AI machine learning has come into being. He is using the computing capabilities that his products has, and based on these computing capabilities, he has identified another niche that he would want to venture into. And you partner when you want to reduce the risk. and when the time to market is extremely low. Say, right now, Corona is the best example because that's what is going on. What do you think? Serum Institute of India or other Pudamala would not have been able to develop a vaccine? Probably they would have been able to develop it, but they wanted to reduce the risk and they knew that the time to market is very low. That's where they collaborated with Oxford and AstraZeneca and started developing a product that they had already started manufacturing a product that they had already developed. You want to buy the technology. Why do you want to buy a certain technology and not license it? Because when it becomes your core business, this is your core business. This is all what you do. You would not want to license it from somebody because that essentially means you are creating a competition for yourself. In that scenarios, you would buy the technology. The time to market is low. The core business, it's your core business. You would buy that technology and develop it. Okay. So depending on the business scenario, you'll decide which of these horses to pick. But alas, what remains there in all whatever I've said is innovation. You cannot shy away from innovation in current business scenario. That's going to be the be all and end all of your business strategy at today's point of time. And to sum it up all, I'll say that those who handle their future responsibly will not run after the one size fits all because there's nothing like a one size fits all. There's nothing like one size fits all at all. Depending on your requirements, your position, your megatrends, you will decide what is the strategy that you would want to deploy. So let's not run after the one size fits all megatrend of the supposed trend gurus, but will base their strategies on the goals and roadmaps of the leading attackers and defenders in their market. With that, I think I've given you it's enough to introspect and ponder upon. With that, I would like to bring an end to the presentation that I was giving. I hope it was of some use to you guys. Now I think we'll open the session for question and answer.
Yes, sir. It was a great presentation, sir.
Thank you.
I request everyone to put up their questions if they have anything in their mind. Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
How can government ensure that the innovations are made in the benefit of society? Like, what part does the government play when it comes to innovation of, for example, COVID vaccines?
See, right now, in my opinion, government should not play a part in innovation. It should come inherently, okay? Because as long as government tries to give you grants, provide you with economic aid for innovating, for research, people just, these are shambles. People just want to make up, show that they are innovating to get these grants. They are not actually innovating. But then if what needs to be done today is it has to come from within. However, in scenarios like Corona, where we know that the innovation is extremely important, what is it that government would be able to do? They'll just be able to provide you with some infrastructure. They'll just be able to provide you with that economic support, the fiscal financial support. But that does not help much unless it comes. The fire has to come from inside. People can only support you if there is a fire inside. That's all what I'm trying to ignite. See, I'm an IP professional. I have been an IP professional for what, about 16 17 years. I myself have 10 patents on my name, okay, for supposed different products, for the filtration industry, for the electrical industry. So nobody told me to develop these patents, okay? It came from within. So it has, that's what I'm trying to tell you guys, that you guys are future leaders. It has to come from within you guys. I hope I've tried my best to answer your question. I hope I've answered it.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
So, one more question I would like to put up.
Yes.
You, as an IP expert, what are the challenges that you face with respect to your roles and responsibilities? What is the challenges that you face?
That's that's a very interesting question. The the challenges I face is multifold. There are two categories of people. I interact with the innovators and I interact with the business leaders. Okay. And the challenge is completely different with this both uh, set of people. Innovators, they have, I call this the innovator syndrome. They feel whatever they have made is the best in the world. They are not open to criticism. I would not even say criticism, but they are not open to feedback. Because as IP professionals, we look at a lot of patents around the world. So when we give feedback based on whatever I have seen in other areas, in other domains. So it's difficult for me to make them understand that what you have done is great, but you can do better. You know, बचपन में टीचर हुआ करती थी जो आपको एक ही रिमार्क दिया करती थी, you have performed well but you can do better. और उस रिमार्क का मतलब आज तक समझ में नहीं आया. I'm sure all mediocre students like me would have had this remark. You have done well, you can do better. Better matlab kya better? So sometimes I go on to explain them how can they improve their product. So the first part of challenge is these people think that whatever they have done is best. And the other extreme is these business leaders who have to spend money for IP production. And they say that whatever this, इसमें तो कुछ potential ही नहीं है, there is no IP potential here. Why should we waste money? This is a very myopic approach to the business, I would say. You're looking at a very short term. Aaj paisa kharch hoga, you're looking at, it's a myopic approach. You know that you're going to spend today, but you're not able to envision what is it that this patent will earn for you 10, 15, 20 years down the line. You're not able to envisage that. So these are the two different challenges that we have. One who says I'm the best, one who says whatever is being done is the worst. Dealing with these two different guys has its own set of challenges. Yes.
Okay, I think Amrita has a question.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, actually, your session is very enlightening. And sir, I would like to ask one question that if someone wants to make a career in this field, like as a patent analyst, so sir, what are the qualities and the skills that we need to build in ourselves to make career in this field?
Eye for details is the biggest skill that you need here. Okay. Eye for details and an analytical mind. You should be able to question the status quo. ऐसा है तो क्यों है? How else can it be done? And I mean, I generally feel that the profession that I am in requires both these capabilities. You need to have a bird's eye view as well as you need to have a worm's eye view of the product or the technology that you're delving in. A bird's eye view to understand what potential this technology has, what is the future of this technology, and a worm's eye view because you're the guy who are trying to defend the technology in various forums, including the patent offices. Because when you are defending it, you need to understand the technology in the entirety. So you need to have this capability that you should be able to, understand things in depth. You should be technology agnostic, and you should have this capability of looking at the broader picture as well.
Yes, sir, but in this thing you have to be. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
So like you have to update it with all the latest innovations and everything because the job that you are doing, it requires so much knowledge in depth. So what keeps you so motivated to be always creative and to always analyze things in deep and a proper manner?
When you get into this industry and when you start working in this domain, that will motivate you because the people around you are highly knowledgeable. It's the world is of survival of the fittest. If I am sitting around PhDs from the top-notch universities in the world, and if they are so motivated, so well educated, for me to even be sitting or sharing the table with them, I need to learn. And that's what pushes me to keep learning or keep studying things.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Tane has a question.
Yes, Tanay.
Very good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So actually, I had a very small question. Like when you entering this field, so initially, what are the challenges that you face in this kind of in this particular job?
Yeah, देखो, the biggest challenge that you will have in this job getting into this field is it requires a lot of reading. Okay. So when I started working, uh, reading and reading legal language to that. Okay. I don't know how many of you guys have read patents or legal languages for that matter. Have you guys had a chance to read patents and stuff? Because reading and understanding patents and stuff is a little difficult because the language is a little twisted. So you need to have good English to comprehend what is written, and you need to have that flair for understanding the technology. Yeah. The challenges that I had was I'm an electrical engineer basically, but I work for field guard filters. I have drafted patents for Microsoft technologies. I've drafted patents for Adobe. So the challenge that I had is there are several things that would come my way, and I would be like, यार मैं electrical engineer हूँ, मैं Adobe का patent कैसे draft कर सकता हूँ? But then it teaches you to become technology agnostic. That is the biggest challenge. You'll have to have the knack of learning new things and learning them really quick. I think that's answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sir, I have one more question. It is a bit opinion based. Sir, has the innovation industry failed to develop a comprehensive vaccine against COVID? What is your opinion on it?
I didn't get you. Please go again. Has the
Okay, so has the innovation industry failed to develop COVID, the comprehensive vaccine against COVID?
vaccine? So there are two technologies for developing vaccine. One is the mRNA technique, another is the old technique where you weaken the virus itself and inject it in your bodies. Now try to understand that vaccines take about normally they were given time. So what I was saying is this vaccine industry now you need to understand this vaccine industry as such. Now this vaccine industry is such that before the COVID scenario, they would get about 10 to 15 years for developing one vaccine, 10 years, 11 years. Now the time is shortened. They had to develop a vaccine in months, what they were doing in years. There are two techniques of developing a vaccine. One is the mRNA technique, okay, where the spike, the what you inject is something that gives the human cells a feeling that the virus is being injected, though the virus is not being injected. It's been replicated and a replica of virus is injected. Your neuroreceptors respond to the uh, feel of that spike protein kind of thing getting inside your body and develop cells, develop antibodies. Okay. And the other technique is where the virus itself is taken, it's weakened, and it's injected in your body. These are the two different techniques. Okay. Now, both these techniques have different cycle time for human trials. What Bharat Biotech developed was the second one where they weakened the virus and they injected in your body. What all other companies I'm saying, including the AstraZeneca, what they did is the mRNA technique where they tried to give a feel that there is a virus that's getting inside your body. And in the process, activating the neuroreceptors to develop antibodies. Okay. Now, whether they have done is what they have done is good or not good, I would not be the right person to comment. But the point is, they have done the best that they could have done in the on the amount of time that was given. The vaccines are not foolproof. Definitely, they are not foolproof. A better vaccine would come in days to come, but then they were not even given enough time to develop this vaccine. So yes, they have not developed the best vaccine that they could have, but they have done a commendable job for the amount of time that they were given to develop this.
So, thank you so much, sir, for sharing your valuable experience and learnings with us. I'm sure the students would have learned a lot from this insightful session. So, best wishes, sir, for your future endeavors. And thank you so much, students, for being a part of this session.